and welcome to the Auditing Antics Podcast. So today we're here in person, like I was saying online. We are currently on another little girls' trip. Last trip to New York was a family trip, and now this time it's just the girls, no kids, no husbands. We get to relax. So we are currently relaxing at the beach, which is great.
And I think sitting closer together than we ever have in our entire life.
Yeah, it's one of our favorite things is to be shoulder to shoulder touching each other. That stayed with us since childhood, right?
Yes, it has.
All right. Well, hopefully today too, the audio isn't too bad. We're trying to record this from a laptop, so forgive us if it's not the greatest, but we wanted to make sure we still covered the final rule. And I want to jump right in because there's so much that's happening this year. One of the things we were just talking about before we hit record is that in 2027, everything that's being proposed, even if you break things apart and think that one particular area is more important than another, for example, some of the issues are that we're still going to see decreases in reimbursement.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, especially with some of the defense work that I do, my concern is that practices are going to be looking to make decisions that maybe they shouldn't be because they're looking for other revenue, and that can potentially lead to some bad decisions.
It absolutely can, because it causes them to seek out those fill-in services where a lot of times it's those vendors that have the latest and greatest to offer you. They're just going to tell you how wonderful it is, and then they're not going to want to deep dive into the particulars of it. They're going to want you to take it at the surface for what it is and not ask too many questions. And as we know, in the compliance realm, a lot of people do that and then find themselves in big trouble. So I think that it's something that we're really going to have to watch out for in 2027.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about a couple of dates. We're trying to do a high-level overview today, but keep in mind, you can go out there, you can access more information. Because this is just a proposal, we don't have the final answers on everything. You know, we have right now until 5 p.m. on September 14th to make any comments. I've put some articles out there. We've been talking about that some, looking to try to, add our 2 cents in there. Not sure how much that helps, but you still want to do it. It's our opportunity that we have to submit our comments, give our thoughts on truly how it's going to impact the industry. Now, typically we'll say around November 1st of each year, we can expect the final rule, but in all actuality, it depends. Sometimes it's later than that, but in the fourth quarter, put it that way, towards the end of the fourth quarter, sometimes even closer to December. So obviously we'll be talking about it. If you follow us on LinkedIn, information's going to be out there. Same with other consultants in the industry as well. We're all paying attention, trying to see how this is going to play out eventually.
Yeah.
And then remember, obviously, January 1st is when things are going to be implemented that are finalized. So again, we'll put information out there. Now, I want to just talk some about the conversion factor. And one thing that is important to know, you can go into the proposed final rule. And I actually will make sure I put links out there on the show notes if you're listening on demand on a podcast platform. I'll put them in YouTube, LinkedIn as well. But there, with the conversion factor, there are charts out there where you can see the expected hit to revenue, basically. Right now, I'm not going to dive into specific numbers just because there's a lot of different factors that play into it.
We could be here for many hours. And once again, this is a proposed rule. So you need to pay attention to what's happening, but know that these are not finalized.
And one of the two different differentiators actually, when we look at the conversion factor, is that there's going to be one for practices that are not a part of an advanced payment model. And quick overview on that, an advanced payment model is something similar to being in an accountable care organization, so an ACO. If you are in the APM is what they call it, and you are a part of something like an ACO, you will have a higher percentage of reimbursement. So that's important to understand, because we're going to see this trend when we talk about some other areas as well, where people in an APM are going to receive more reimbursement when we're looking at conversion factors and the way things are being taken away. Michelle, one of my things that I struggle with this is when we see everything related to the APM, it can be great for family practice, internal medicine, but then we have issues because that leaves out specialty practices.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind when we're looking at all of this. You know, the ACOs, for example, with the way that they have the metrics they need to meet and things like that, they tend to stay away from specialty-based practices. So I really feel like anyone who is outside of primary practice, even if we look at things like pediatrics, for example, specialists are still going to fall to the wayside, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I want to talk about is the removal of G2211.
Yeah, that, in my opinion, is a pretty significant change. As you know, as we audit, as we review, that's a pretty heavily used add-on code for that complexity. So I'm really interested to see what they do with this proposed rule. It doesn't surprise me that they're wanting to change it up, because I think that G2211 is used way more than, do you remember the percentage that they anticipated it being used? It was like really low. I want to say like 5 or 10%, or was it more like 30?
I don't remember. It could have been 30 or below, but it was still a low percentage.
It was like,
of what they were expecting.
You're offering this extra payment. Why do you think it's only going to apply 30% of the time, or whatever percentage it was? It was just wild to me what they were thinking. So it's no surprise that they're coming in and making a change to the G2211.
Right. Now, one of the disrupting factors of this, so you may be thinking to yourself, oh, well, they're going to do away with G2211 and they're giving us modifiers. Well, one of the first things that people started to question on LinkedIn, and they're absolutely correct, is the fact that when we remove G2211, it's going to be removing RVUs that were attached to that. And the reasoning from CMS, if you think about it this way, their reasoning is that the additional RVUs were added the same way, regardless of if it was a level 2 or a level 5. So you could have a simple service, and you could still have more RVUs being added in that particular way. So that, I get people who are saying that, but at the same time, this is going to show more of the appropriate additional work that's involved with the complexity of the patient.
And in all honesty, I think it takes it. So you take the RVU away. What do providers get reimbursed on or even incentivized on? And it is their RVU count. So if we take that away from the mix, I think it allows it to be applied not from that, I don't know a word other than emotional connection they might have to that extra payment. It's not emotional, but I don't know how else to describe what I'm thinking. So I think it's going to take it off the back of the doctors kind of to add that.
Yeah. Well, and right now as well, one thing to keep in mind, we just have placeholders. So when you see mod 1 and mod 2, it just means we're going to have 2 modifier options. We do not know what those are yet. We need to wait for the final rule. Mod 1 is going to be for those practices, again, that are not a part of an APM. So modifier 1 will add an additional 16% onto the base value of the E&M service. Mod 2 is for those that are a part of an APM model, and that'll add 32% onto that base rate. So we'll see what ends up happening. It seems like that's going to go forward, but everything's still unknown. One trend, like I was saying, is all of these differences with the conversion and that modifier. That's where we see the difference when you're in an APM and when you're not. So they're really pushing. We know they've been pushing towards, quality-based care, reimbursements, trying to get away from fee-for-service more. This is a mix of it, obviously, but this is a very clear push, more so than we've had in a while.
It's a clear distinction that they're making, that they're favoring those organizations.
Yep. Now let's talk about the Modifier 25 reduction. So this is something we've seen happening already with commercial payers for a long time, whether they've had a policy or not. A lot of them will cut reimbursement by 50% if you have the 25 modifier. Well, CMS has come out and said that they're going to start doing this. So as a part of the proposal, basically what will happen when you have a modifier 25, now this is important. It's when the procedure has 0 to 10 or 90-day global period attached to it. So, which the 90-day global period, they say that, and it doesn't make sense because that'd be 57, but
it doesn't apply.
Basically, think of it, if it has a global period attached, this will be applicable. So they'll pay the highest value price at 100%, and then everything else is going to be cut at 50%. And, this is something, again, where there's, murmurings on LinkedIn, for example, and everyone says, well, people are just going to change their scheduling.
We already see that to an extent, though. It's something that every year I feel like is in the proposed rule, something with the 25 modifier. But I think that the driver of this is the blatant misuse of the 25 modifier. I know that in my auditing, I see it day to day where it is used incorrectly. So overuse of the 25 modifier, if you're following that practice of just tack it on and send it out,
right?
That is absolutely incorrect. Overuse of that modifier shines a big glaring light onto that service because it's something that is so looked after, and it is way overused. I mean, sometimes we just have to accept the fact that the work that is done that day is included in the payment you've received for the procedure. And I think that is what is so hard to get our providers to comprehend and combat that wanting to bill that E&M.
Well, and it's one of those areas too that has been somewhat gray because we may not have good documentation that's clearly showing it, but then the providers are pushing, they want it added on. To your point, some practices just add the 25 because they know it needs to be there because there's an edit and don't pay attention to what that means. But one thing that I want to point out for people that are thinking to themselves, oh, we'll just schedule differently so that we can still be paid. CMS has already addressed that in the proposal. They actually stated that your scheduling habits or patterns, basically, I'm paraphrasing here, I don't have it in front of me, but it's in the final rule. They say that you cannot change your scheduling to maximize your reimbursement. And I want to caution you on this because we have to remember how much data is being used right now in the audit and investigation space. And it would be so easy, even if I am meeting with a new client, I could easily ask them to run a report of their charges. And if I see that patients are constantly a day apart, a week apart, and it always happens to be because there's a procedure. Yes, maybe you could defend that. I'm not saying it couldn't be defended, but that's going to be a glaring issue that could very easily cause probe audits and things like that to happen. So don't think that your scheduling alone is going to bypass things like this.
And I want to give a reminder, if you are an auditor, somebody who is evaluating this type of documentation, this is why looking all around the encounter is so important, because we need to be able to identify these changes, because these are changes that are put into place by administrative means with compliance not even factored into those decisions. So if you start seeing those patterns, you have to call them out, and you have to get the right people to the table to stop that from happening.
Mm-hmm. Now, moving into telehealth, I just want to say, because we are trying to summarize this, we're not going to talk about every proposed change. With telehealth, there are some things related to teaching physicians.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in a teaching facility, we need to keep an eye on that. I have clients that are in teaching facilities. There's going to be some changes potentially to the way that the precepting is done for the 3-way telehealth visits, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking at adding some additional services to the Medicare list. If you remember, we can go on to cms.gov, download that zip file, and see all of the services that they allow under telehealth. Proposed changes to that, and also looking at some critical care telehealth codes. Have a lot of opinions. We're not touching that today because I don't even understand why it's a thing, but it is.
Exactly.
And we'll talk about that more when they finalize it. Now, where I want to focus on telehealth today is an overview related to the modifiers. Mm-hmm. So we have Modifier BB, which is going to be used for services that are furnished through certain virtual telehealth platforms. And I don't have the exact wording in front of me right now, but there's also references to essentially whether or not that platform is owned or leased or purchased from the entity. So that's going to be interesting to see, when we have these modifiers that are informational, they're not payment-based modifiers, that means they're tracking for some reason.
Yes, they are.
So I'm interested to dig into that more to see, kind of what it is that they're wanting to look for there. The obvious is, to me, thinking about the fact that you're required to use the HIPAA compliant platform.
I'm like, where's she going?
But then also the other thing I'm thinking about is with the RPM services, which we need to cover that separately too.
Yeah,
but the RPM services, they're no longer going to allow the staff to be contracted. So they have to be employed by the entity. So now I'm wondering, okay, is this somehow intertwined in there? Yeah, but that'll come with some more research. We'll talk about that more. So BB is services through virtual telehealth platforms. And then the question about, we'll say the money attached, who's employed where, who's leasing, who's doing what. Then our BC modifiers used for telehealth services furnished incident to another professional.
They're really trying to weed those encounters out and make them stand out, I think, because incident 2 it's another thing. I know we talked about it early on in the podcast, but maybe it's something we need to touch on again, maybe after we get the final rule and find out more about this modifier. But I find the modifier thing pretty interesting because this is details that we're going to need to know. And I'm just trying to think of how you're going to support that, especially the BB modifier with the platform that you're using. And we're going to need to see changes to telehealth statements. And as it already is, I don't know about you, Stephanie, but I don't often see a telehealth statement that really encompasses everything necessary to be able to know that the modifier or not modifier, the place of service you're using is correct, that the service was actually able to be billed to begin with. Like, was the patient and provider in a state where the provider is licensed to provide care? So it's really interesting to me, and it's going to be interesting auditing these services.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and the other thing is too, when they talk about the, what was it? BC, I said, right? BC.
Yeah, it was BB and BC.
Yeah. So the BC modifier with incident 2, they also made it a clear point to say that is going to require the Incident 2 guidelines to be met. So it doesn't just mean you chose to bill a service under someone else.
Yeah.
Incident 2 is going to have to be met. Then we think, or my mind goes down the trail of all the issues we've had with direct virtual supervision.
Yeah.
What does that mean in the context of these other things, and whether or not it can be telehealth? And I think we have a lot to unpack there once we get everything finalized.
I think it's
go
their
ahead.
nice way of saying, we don't like this.
Yeah.
So we're going to.
I wish they'd just do away with
I
it.
know.
We've needed that gone for a long time.
It's never done correctly. And
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not helpful to people when we're looking at compliance risk a lot of the time. So one thing that I just want to point out here too, as we're ending out this particular episode, remember when we talk about the proposed rule, what we're referring to is the fact that a lot of these different areas are embedded in that document. So when the Federal Register comes out, they talk about the proposed rule, all of those things. Sometimes they embed it in there. Some of it they do have to go through with. Some of it isn't a matter of public opinion and the way the comments come out. Some of that they're definitely going through with things like the modifiers, stuff like that. So don't get confused with that. But at this point in time, I think it's helpful to be aware of what the rules are so that you can start, again, checking your compliance. Every single episode, we could always talk about the importance of external audits. But as we've seen, this administration is very aggressive. Whether the focus is appropriate or not based on what's happening clinically, that's definitely to question. But they're very aggressive, and we're seeing this again. We saw it last year. Wound care is getting hit hard again. There's just so much more to unpack here. We really need to do some of this in separate episodes.
Yeah.
And we'll start to break that down. There are things we know are changing that are not just proposed, so we'll start to break those down. But you need to dig in. Don't wait until the end of the year to be paying attention to what's happening. I know that, there's always a rush. I can't believe we're almost through August already.
How we're already looking at the proposed rule is.
Yeah. So, pay attention. And it's not just our podcast that's going to cover it. Terry Fletcher, Sean Weiss, the compliance guy, he's covering it. Meredith Hirsch in the Working Healthcare podcast, she's covering a lot of things that are happening towards the end of the year. So there's a lot of information out here. Just make sure you're keeping your eyes open, your ears open, and ask questions. We're all in this together, and it's a lot to navigate. We try to keep our pulse on it, pay attention, but there's always a lot to dig through. So don't feel bad if it's overwhelming. Reach out. We'll try to keep getting information out there. Next week we'll be back. I'm not sure yet what we're talking about. We got to get back home and figure that out.
I know. All this travel, it's not done yet either. It's a crazy last 6 months of the year, but it's fun. I mean, who doesn't like to go to the beach?
Well, and I had this opportunity because I was invited to the AAPC chapter meeting for Palm Beach.
Yeah.
So I don't always go in person. A lot of times I do them remote and virtually, but a good friend of mine, Shannon Cameron, she reached out and asked, and it was the perfect opportunity to have a little girls trip tacked on because Michelle and our parents are in Florida too.
Yes.
So anytime I come to Florida, most of the time I'm back in Lakeland, back seeing the parents and Michelle. But yeah, it's been nice to extend trips a little bit, still getting work done, of course, but
yes, that's one of the benefits of, I recognize that and am really appreciative for the flexibility that I have. So
yeah. And as you can see, we're recording at night. This is not early morning.
No.
We're recording ahead of time to make sure everything's good and set. So thanks for joining us. We had fun being together. I'm going to speak for her. like I always like to do. I won't bully her.
Oh, the podcast stories I could tell.
Oh no, we will end here before she tells the story. Let me tell you. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see everybody back next week.